Drake might be entering a completely different era right now because Iceman doesn't feel like a normal album drop. It feels personal. It feels bitter. But at the same time, I'm not going to lie, musically, I think it's one of his most strongest albums in recent years. Now, first off, the sound of Iceman, it's interesting because Drake is pulling from a lot of different pockets right now that we haven't heard. You got references to Bitcoin, Polymarket. You got West Coast production all over the album. He's worked with a Bay Area producer by the name of Overcast on Make Them Pay, and that's one of the most lyrical songs on that album. Then you got production from Bay Area artists Pilo and Kari helping shape some of the West Coast sounding records like Too Hard for the Radio. At one point, Drake even mentions having an Oakland show and putting it on Cetus. That's Oakland slang. They say that's on Cetus. You know, like how you hear people say on Mamas, on Phone Them. In the Bay Area, they say on Cetus. Like it's like Mamacita. Anyway, so clearly, Drake, he's leaning into California culture and sounds on this project. But underneath it all, this album, it feels like it's fueled by revenge to me. You know, that's the main energy that I get from it. Even the song titles tell you everything. Make Them Pay, Make Them Remember. Those don't sound like records from somebody who's fully moved on. And throughout the project, Drake keeps circling back to Betrayal, people switching up on him, and shots at streaming numbers disappearing. I think that's towards Kendrick Lamar, which obviously, you know, he's going back to that same Kendrick Lamar situation from 3 years ago. Then he says, fuck the big three, talking about how there were too many chefs in the kitchen and the whole thing was messy from the beginning. I think that's a shot at J. Cole and Kendrick. And honestly, after a while, it starts sounding less competitive and more emotional. He sounds very emotional, like like he's complaining, like a crybaby. Like, bro, relax. You know, this happened years ago. And the thing is, it's not like Drake doesn't understand how the industry works. He literally gave us a record called No Friends in the Industry. So at some point, you either accept the game for what it is or keep replaying the betrayal over and over and over. You know, like that's really my only issue with this project, because musically I think it's a good album. The production is hard, the sequencing is strong, and songs like Make Them Pay and Too Hard for the Radio, those are some of my favorite songs off that Drake album, and probably some of my favorite songs that I've heard from Drake in a minute. I'm not really attached to the newer albums. I mean, the two surprise albums, Habibti or Maid of Honor. Those projects feel softer, more R&B leaning, more experimental. But Iceman, that's the project I keep going back to. Now, feature-wise, I'm not in love with all the collaborations. He brought out Molly Santana. I don't know much about her. Stunner Sandy appears on one of the projects too. But honestly, some of these features feel unnecessary and random. Like Drake is searching for energy instead of naturally creating moments. And that's why this era feels different compared to older Drake eras. Old Drake feels effortless. This version feels calculated. Like every line is trying to respond to somebody. Every move feels like it's trying to reclaim dominance. But one thing I will absolutely give Drake credit for is creativity behind the rollout. Iceman episode 4 was crazy. The fact he had visuals for basically every song was smart. And honestly, more artists should do that if they have the budget. If they have the budget, you could do it. Because now, you know, people there, you know, we just aren't listening to songs the same way. You know, artists need to experiment with the project. You know, visuals, they help records stick harder to me. They keep fans engaged longer. And they give people more reasons to actually sit through the album instead of just skimming through it once. That's how I ended up listening to the whole album, because usually I'm just skimming through. So from a creative standpoint, I think Drake absolutely nailed that part of the rollout. Overall, I think Iceman is a strong album, probably one of Drake's best recent projects. But emotionally, it still sounds like somebody who hasn't fully let go of the past. And maybe that's the point. Maybe this Drake is documenting what it looks like when somebody at the top starts feeling isolated. Because right now, this doesn't sound like an artist at peace. It sounds like somebody still keeping score. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm Lowski the First. This is Play That Back. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hype it up, all that good stuff. Peace.